Welcome friends to the new episode of our YouTube series How Do Expert Manages It. Since the videos are posted on YouTube, one can watch and listen it as and when time permits them. Our today's subject is intrauterine inseminations. The expert faculty today is Dr. Ritu Hinduja. Dr. Ritu Hinduja is a senior consultant in reproductive medicine at Nova IVI, Andheri, Mumbai. She did Masters in Reproductive Medicine from Hamilton University, London, Diploma in Reproductive Medicine from the Cape University, Germany. She has a certificate in genetic counseling from Martin Luther University, India. She has received multiple awards from MOGS and Foxy. She is a member of Managing Committee of ISHA 2020-2022. She has authored many chapters and books. She has to accredit many publications in index journals. She is editor of Nova Textbook of Infertility and Nova Handbook of Infertility. These are few of her credentials.
IUI or intrauterine insemination is the therapeutic introduction of sperms into the uterine cavity. IUI is a widely utilized technique for the treatment of infertility. It is a very effective first line of treatment in properly selected cases, and it is less invasive. The rationale behind doing an IUI is that it reduces the effective factors such as vaginal acidity, cervical mucus hostility, and it deposits motile, morphologically normal sperms as close to the oocyte as possible and as close to the time of ovulation as possible. So in an IUI, we are doing nothing but carrying out the cervical function in the laboratory. We get rid of debris, abnormal sperms, dead sperms and seminal plasma, which in turn eliminates the prostaglandin reaction. We also pick up good motile sperms and capacitate the sperms in vitro. We concentrate the semen into a small volume. So the important issues that we are going to discuss today are patient selection, ovarian stimulation for an IUI, monitoring of the ovarian stimulation, semen preparation, technique of the IUI, and luteal support. The indications for doing an IUI with a husband or partner semen sample are unexplained infertility, ovulatory dysfunction like in polycystic ovarian syndrome, mild endometriosis, cervical factor infertility, immunological causes of infertility, and psychosexual disorders like non-consummation of marriage where IUI can be done under sedation or anesthesia, mild male factor infertility, anatomical defects like hypospadias, retrograde ejaculation, and erectile dysfunction. Indications for IUI with a donor semen sample is azoospermia, severe oligoastenospermia with repeated ICSI failures, severe oligoastenospermia not affording an ICSI cycle, genetic or hereditary disorders in the paternal side that we do not want to pass on to the progeny, severe seminal defects, Rh isoimmunization, HIV positive husband, same-sex couples desirous of a pregnancy, single women looking to carry a child. The prerequisites or basic evaluation before we start an IUI cycle is, as in all cases, we approach a case with a detailed clinical history. We should also have a detailed semen profile, a baseline transvaginal ultrasound to rule out any kind of ovarian pathology, and particularly on day 2 before starting an IUI cycle, we should know that there are no cysts in the ovary while we are starting the IUI cycle. An HSG or a hysterosalpingogram must be done, or a hysterolaparoscopy should be done for knowing the tubal status of the woman before we attempt an IUI cycle. We should also exclude major endocrinological disorders like hypothyroidism or hyperprolactinemia, which may interfere in the woman's chances of conception. We should also test for any sexually transmitted disease in the husband and the wife, and an informed consent must be obtained in all cases. The steps involved in an IUI is monitoring of a natural or a simulated cycle so that the time of ovulation is apparent on ultrasound, the preparation of the semen sample. A sperm sample is obtained from either the male partner or the donor, and the sample is optimally put through a process like density gradient or swim up, which is also known as sperm washing. Procedure of insemination, in which the sperm sample is then inserted into the woman's uterus via a catheter through the cervix in an OPD procedure. The rationale of stimulation in IUI is that we increase the number of eggs available for fertilization, thereby increasing the chances that the sperm will meet the egg. We overcome subtle defects in ovulatory function and in luteal phase. While stimulating in an IUI cycle, our aim is to recruit multiple follicles, control the timing of ovulation, prevent the premature LH surge. We also know when exactly to do the IUI, because once we know that ovulation is taking place on an ultrasound, only then we go ahead and do the IUI, and thereby we increase the pregnancy rate. An optimum stimulation for an IUI is when we have recruited around 2 to 3 follicles with a diameter of 18 to 20 mm, and the endometrium is around 6 to 8 mm in thickness and is trilaminar in morphology on the ultrasound. So the stimulation protocols that we can use in an IUI cycle, we can do an IUI in a natural cycle where we track the natural cycle of the woman from day 2 itself, and once the lead follicle or the dominant follicle becomes 18 to 20 millimeters in diameter, we do the IUI. We can use drugs like clomiphene citrate or letrozole. Clomiphene citrate in the dose of 50 to 100 milligrams per day. Letrozole in the dose of 2.5 to 5 milligrams per day from day 2 of the cycle to day 6 of the cycle. And then monitor the cycle without any drugs till the lead follicle is around 18 to 20 millimeters in diameter. Trigger the follicle with HCG 10,000 and then do the IUI 36 to 48 hours later, after you have confirmed rupture on the ultrasound. Or we can use the protocol clomiphene citrate plus HMG, where we use clomiphene citrate in the dose of 50 to 100 milligrams per day and HMG in the dose of 75 to 150 IU. We give clomiphene citrate from day 2 to day 6, and we add HMG from day 7 onwards and give it on a daily basis till the lead follicle is again 18 to 20 millimeters in diameter, and then we trigger. In a purely HMG or an FSH cycle, if you would prefer using an FSH in your stimulation for IUI, we use gonadotropins in the dose of 75 to 150 IU per day from day 2 itself, and give it on a daily basis till the lead follicle is again around 18 to 20 mm in diameter when we trigger. In an HMG and an antagonist protocol, it does come handy when you have cases of mild endometriosis or cases in which previously you have encountered luteinized unruptured follicle, where you can give HMG or recombinant FSH in the dose of 75 IU or 150 IU per day from day 2 onwards, and you give it up to when the lead follicle is around 18 to 20 mm. You add antagonist in the dose of 0.25 when the lead follicle is around 14 mm. Once you add the antagonist also needs to be given on a daily basis along with the gonadotropin that you have chosen, and you can give it till your lead follicle is around 18 to 20 mm in diameter. Please note that once you're using an antagonist, keep at least a 12-hour gap between the last antagonist dose and your trigger injection. Now the question arises that which stimulation protocol is better for an IUI cycle. There has been a Cochrane review in 2007 which has proved that there are higher pregnancy rates with a pure gonadotropin cycle compared to a clomiphene citrate cycle without any increased risks. So the Cochrane said that gonadotropins might be the most effective drugs while doing an IUI cycle. The low dose protocols are advised, like I have already spoken, that we don't use a dose of more than 75 to 150 IU of gonadotropins. There is evidence that IUI with controlled ovarian hyperstimulation increases the live birth rate compared to IUI alone in a natural cycle. The likelihood of pregnancy was also increased for the treatment with IUI compared to timed intercourse, both in the stimulated cycle. So how do you go about carrying out the procedure of an IUI? The procedure should ideally be carried out in a dedicated insemination room or the theatre with the sterilized instruments laid out on a trolley. So this is what a trolley for an IUI cycle should look like. We generally just need the self-retaining bivalve speculum to expose the cervix, a sponge holder, some gauze, saline to clean the cervix before the procedure, and the IUI catheter. So the procedure of an IUI needs to be done immediately after semen preparation. If required, it should be done within 90 minutes of collection. The sample should be maintained at 37 degrees centigrade in a test tube warmer or held in a fist to keep it warm. It can be kept outside at room temperature but not for very long. Patients should be asked not to void the bladder, and IUI should be done on a full bladder. This helps in correcting the anteversion and makes the IUI procedure relatively easier. It also helps us do the IUI under transabdominal ultrasound guidance. Lithotomy position is given to the patient. The cervix is exposed with a bivalve speculum. Cervical mucus is wiped with a sponge holder dipped in normal saline, and the semen sample is then slowly inseminated in the uterine cavity as slow as possible. So there are various IUI catheters which are available in the market. You have to know what you're comfortable with and what you can work with. So there's Surgimedics, Gynetics or Wallace, which you can probably try and use and narrow down on your preference. So there is a long lasting debate on how many IUIs need to be done, whether 2 IUIs will increase the success rate of the IUI procedure. However, the Cochrane database says that a single well-timed IUI in couples suffering from unexplained subfertility should suffice. However, there are people who are in support of a double IUI, where they do say that you should do an IUI before the rupture is confirmed and after the rupture is confirmed. So you give the trigger on a particular day, the next day you do a IUI, and then after that again the next day you do another IUI. And there have been studies which report positive effect of double IUI in couples suffering from male subfertility. This is a question that most of the couples will ask you, whether we need bed rest after IUI. However, we don't require bed rest after IUI. Only 10 to 15 minutes of immobilization is enough subsequent to an IUI, with or without ovarian stimulation, and this 10 to 15 minutes of immobilization does help in increasing the cumulative ongoing pregnancy rates and live birth rates. So there has been a long ongoing debate about whether IUI should be supported with luteal phase medications or not, since the ovulation takes place inside a woman's body and there is corpus luteum which is getting created. However, when ovarian stimulation is done to stimulate the development of multiple follicles, the treatment overrides the physiological feedback mechanisms. The multiple follicles and copulutea secrete larger amount of estradiol and progesterone. So there is increased estradiol, increased progesterone and increased inhibin A, which leads to decreased LH and decreased FSH. The low levels of AH results in lack of lutetropic support, manifested by low levels of progesterone and or short luteal phase, thereby justifying the use of luteal phase support medications. Further in support of the use of luteal phase support medication is the randomized controlled trial which has been published by Erdem et al. That investigated the efficacy of luteal support in couples with unexplained infertility undergoing stimulated IUI cycles, and they supported the use of luteal support medications. They showed a statistically significant effect was found in favor of the luteal support, and they said that the live birth rate per couple was 45% where luteal phase support medications were used, as in compared to 31% when they were not used. For luteal phase support, you can either use oral progesterone or you can use vaginal micronized progesterone. Vaginal micronized progesterone can be used in the dose of 400 milligrams per day, and oral dufestone or oral progesterone can be used in the dose of 30 milligrams per day. The success rates of an IUI cycle depend upon the following: the age of the woman, the status of the fallopian tubes, and the semen sample. Across all patient types, IUI cycles have a live birth rate per cycle between 5 to 15%. The success rates of an IUI cycle with one cycle in terms of age is as follows. It is 10 to 20% in women under the 35 years of age bracket, 10% for women between 30 to 40 years of age, 2 to 5% for women above the age of 40 years. When do you stop doing IUIs? And when you stop doing IUIs, what is the next thing that you advise to your patients? So beyond an IUI cycle, you can provide a break to the couple, but never tell a couple that they cannot conceive. After 3 to 4 IUIs, if a diagnostic hysterolaparoscopy has not been done, then you can do one. Please explain to the couple that IUI has its own limitations and the success rate is only 5 to 15%. However, after 3 IUI cycles, the success rate falls further if the tubal patency was already tested for. Poor responders, women approaching 40, you should counsel for IVF sooner than later. Couples with severe male factor infertility should also be directed directly towards an ICSI cycle rather than attempting IUIs. I hope this presentation has been useful to clear some of your doubts, and I hope this series, How We Do It, has been beneficial to you. And I also would like to thank you for listening to me and Dr. Sudhir Shah for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ritu Hinduja, for a very interesting and educative talk with slide presentations of our day-to-day practice. Please like the link and share it to your friends, your colleagues and your students. Please subscribe this channel to watch such videos in future. Thank you very much.